erstwhile on Rob Mods.
The idea of also having a second low-pass filter on the direct signal, I think it'd make a really nice feature to add to my modded OC2. Probably going to be more like 10 or 12 parts I have to change instead of 4 or 5. Just going to mute the drums. As I mentioned in the last video, I've been messing around with the idea of putting a low pass filter on the direct signal as well. And the reason is I used to use the pedal with my P bass and have the tone pot on the bass rolled all the way down, and it gives the direct signal that really woody sort of dark tone, and when you wind that in and blend it with some of the octave effect, it kind of fattens up the mid-range of that octave effect, and it kind of gives the pedal almost like a hammered organ bass pedal type vibe. It's pretty cool actually. So that's why I think it'd be nice to have a low pass filter on the direct signal actually built into the pedal. And with that in mind, I actually set up this EQ just for the direct signal. Let me just solo that. And as I roll the frequency up, you know, there's really not a lot going on above 8-9 kilohertz. Even with a really bright sounding active bass, you're not going to get a lot above that. So I think that'll be my upper limit of the control. There's no real need to roll it any lower than, say, 150, 140 hertz. That's kind of going to get, well, even an active bass to sound, well, something like a P bass with the tone pot rolled all the way off, again, to get that really dark sort of sound. And that means that in the middle, the roll-off will be something like about 800-900 hertz. Yeah, I think that sounds actually pretty cool to me. Anyway, so with that in mind, I've actually simulated the cell and key filter again, and I've found some values that'll give me that sweep from about 9 kilohertz down to 140, and with the pot in the middle it will be about 800 hertz, which is kind of cool because even if I'm using it with a passive bass, I'll still have a little bit of adjustment to the clockwise side of halfway, if you know what I mean. So if we look at the original schematic for the pedal, the idea is to repurpose the components or the parts of the pedal that create that second octave, which I'm no longer using. It has its own filter, just like the first octave. In this case, it's set to 140 hertz, I think it is. It's a third order filter. And the idea is to run the direct signal into this part of the circuit and then mod the filter so that I can adjust it like I did in the last video. So with that in mind, if we look at the circuit as it stands right now after the last video and the mods I did then, there's quite a bit to do. The first thing I have to do is to kind of rewire this op amp here around pins 1, 2 and 3 of IC5, rewire it so that it is a non-inverting buffer. And to do that, the first thing I have to do is remove C29, then I have to remove R54. I'll also remove the diode and the switching FET. R55 I'll remove and then replace it with a short circuit, and then R53 will be replaced with a coupling cap. So now this op amp is a simple non-inverting buffer. So now I have to think about how to get the direct signal into this part of the circuit. The first thing I have to do is remove the existing direct signal control because that has to be relocated till after the filter. And then I can just hook this up like that. There will be vacant solder pads available to do this just with a piece of wire. I think that'll be the easiest way to do it. Until I pull the pedal apart, I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to do it, but I think that's the way I'll do it. Looking over at the filter itself and modding it so that it sweeps from 9K down to 140 Hertz or whatever it was. The first thing I have to do is remove C32 because I'm not using that first order part, that RC first order filter. I'm just going to have the second order part of the filter, the Allen key part of the filter, adjustable. The next thing I'm going to do is actually remove R57 and R58, those two 330K resistors, and I'm also going to change R56 from 22K to 8.2K, and you'll see why that is in a sec. Then it's a matter of changing the two caps in the filter to suit the simulation I did. So C31 is changed to 4.7 nanofarads and C30 is changed from 1 nanofarad up to 1.5 nanofarads. Then I can install the pot, and it's very similar to what I had last time, with each gang of the pot in series, in this case with an 8.2k ohm resistor. And because I've replaced R56 with an 8.2k ohm resistor, it means I only have to put one resistor on that little piece of circuit board with the pot. And again, that's kind of cool for a reason which I'll explain in a sec as well. The final thing I have to do is to reinstate the second octave pot, which I removed last time to make way for our low pass filter, because now it's going to be the volume control for the direct level. So here's my little piece of circuit board. There's a wire link and there's our 8.2k ohm resistor and our 3 flying leads. Because I've only got one resistor on this little piece of circuit board, it means I've got a spare track here, and you can see I've cut it into 2 lands. And the reason is that I know that this size, this height of this circuit board will still fit between the top of the box and the existing circuit board, and that means I can actually potentially run some hookup wire from these empty lands down to the board to help hold it in place. The existing circuit board has the 3 original pots soldered to it, and that's how the board is held in place. But of course all 3 of those pots will be changed by the time I finish modding it, so I've got to work out a way to hold that circuit in place. I think I'll work it out. There's quite a lot to do. It's quite an involved mod, so I better get back to the workshop. So with the extra low pass filter, I now need 4 controls. So I bought this tiny little dual concentric pot from Small Bear. I needed to buy a pair of knobs for this as well, because the shafts are smaller than the stack pots you normally use in guitars. As tiny as these are, the upper knob still sits quite high, so after measuring up, I realised I could trim about 6mm from the upper knob and it would still go on just fine. The tape here is both to mark the cut and also to protect the knob from the jaws of my vise. Small Bear only had silver in stock, but I figured I could spray them black easily enough. Actually, I decided to see if I could mask off a little silver circle on top so it would kind of match the other knobs. I'm using thin double-sided tape for this, but if I try this again, I'll use a couple of drops of super glue to stick the washer down to proper masking tape. This tape really didn't leave a very clean line, and I tried to touch it up with a Nico pen later on, but it actually bled slightly under the clear coat that I used. But you can only see it at very close range, so I'm really fine with leaving it as is. I'd like the pedal to remain looking kind of factory actually, almost as if Boss had actually bought this circuit out as an OC2B at some stage. well, that seems to work pretty well. Let me wind in a bit of the effect sound. And there's the low pass filter from the last video. I actually had to shuffle these 3 controls around. I've moved that over to this corner. Just made more sense really to install the stacked pot on this side, because what was the OC2, or the second octave I should say, is now of course our direct sound after the filter. And with these little stacked pots, the upper control is connected to the bottom gain, so that just went straight down to the board. Although I did actually end up installing this on a little piece of strip board. These little lugs are pretty flimsy, and they're really designed for strip board, so for circuit board I should say, so it made more sense to do it that way. There's a couple of sounds I really like. The first one is where you've got the octave more or less soloed, and you've got this low pass filter crank, so you've got that really kind of gnarly, almost synthy sort of sound, but it's just lacking a little bit of bottom end, a little bit of warmth. Well, the cool thing about this is I can roll all the tone off the direct sound and then wind a bit of that in. It just fattens up that sort of synthy sound, gives it a bit more body, a bit more punch, so that's really cool. And of course, the main sound that I was going for, I think I mentioned it at the start of the video, was that like the pedal board or the pedals on a Hammond organ, that kind of sound. And if I roll a little bit of the tone off the original sound, and probably just start with the direct sound, and then roll in pretty cool. It's a great sound. And with that in mind, I've been playing around with this old phase pedal I have. This is a Dodd 201 from the late 70s, maybe early 80s, trying to get a little bit of that wobbly Leslie sort of tone. So it's pretty cool. Anyway, I think that'll do for this video. Thanks for watching. Give me a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments if you've tried this or any of the other mods that I've shown on the channel. I'll put a PDF up on my website with the final schematic and some other info and stuff. But for now, I think I'm going to have a jam session. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.